This week, we were kind of thinking about stuff to get into, stuff we wanted to talk about. And the big thing that jumped out at all of us was, Dan has done a live karaoke standing event for years at
Yep.
this point.
Solo acoustic.
Eh,
Acoustic karaoke. Yeah.
Sure, but it's
But
still,
not a band. Just me,
it's
live
live.
guitar,
Yeah.
singers. Yeah, totally.
And we've got a fair amount of those gigs coming up. And so we felt it was a cool idea to do live band karaoke do's and don'ts for the band who might be looking to get into it. Just kind of best practices that we've figured out over the course of this whole thing. Now, objectively, live band karaoke is a really interesting proposition because it does require a little bit of setup on the band's end.
Yes.
You have to have a pretty wide swath of repertoire in order to do this properly. I would say, if you're just getting started, 50 songs is probably like the bare minimum that you could get away with.
Yeah.
But realistically, you need to be like 100 or more to do this in a way that is sustainable.
Yeah. I was
But,
at the same time as I was doing karaoke shows, I was also doing trivia shows, and
mhm,
kind of in the same week I'd do one of each of them. And I was committed for a while to doing no repeats in my trivia shows because I had people coming back over and over again, and I didn't want to play the same
yeah,
stuff for them. So that really expanded my repertoire, and a lot of those things found their way onto my karaoke list, which is now about 530 songs.
yeah.
And there are certainly some that people could pull out and be like, "Wow, I haven't touched that one. We're going to need to just pass and pick something else." There are
Ah,
certainly some of
save
those
it.
in there. Yeah, right. But there are also some. Well, we'll come back to that. You're right. Um, Point is, if you've got a list that big, honestly, the top 40 are the ones that people request.
Sure.
So yeah, you're not exposing yourself too much.
Well, and the one thing that you end up finding out is, especially when you get to a repertoire that wide, is like you just kind of fall into this thing where songs are just like data points,
Yeah,
and you don't really even need to quote unquote learn the song. It's the I remember hearing this once. I know where the changes are.
yeah,
I can look at a chart, kind of glance at it just at a cursory level, and just crank these songs out.
yeah, yeah. Including if it's just me and a guitar and somebody singing, often we get to the bridge and none of us know what's supposed to happen, right? And so I'll just shout out, skip ahead. Let's go to the next verse. And we'll just do it. We'll just jump ahead. The stakes are really, really low when you don't have a whole band to coordinate or a track to sync
Mhm.
with. I always say, in a lot of ways, that's easier for singers than traditional recorded karaoke because if you miss your entrance, I'll just play through the intro again. Like
Right. You
I
can,
gotcha. Just
yeah.
just stick with me. It's makes life a lot easier in some ways and different and challenging in others.
But it is all it's a twofold thing because it is something that will 100% like tighten up a band
Mm,
and like really spread your roster
yes.
significantly. And it is a unique value prop for you and the venues in your area because not everybody can do it. And those that do have a competitive advantage where you can offer that as an option. We were talking about this last week that it's important to be able to come in with different products to
Hmm.
sell to potential clients, and this is one of them. And it's been very lucrative. Our live band karaoke gigs are the higher paying gigs.
Yes.
They do require a little bit more overhead, but they also demand a higher price tag.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in our experience, it's been worth the effort, and it benefits the regular standing groups because we have to work on tunes and learn stuff that widens our backlog. So
Right.
this week we added Flagpole Sitta, Harvey Danger, Love Shack, Jack and Diane, like songs that we are going to play in the future.
Exactly.
And it was just like it was kind of just a nice excuse to sit there and like dig into these songs that have been kind of on the back burner forever, but now we had a reason to do them, and now they're in there, so we can just start pulling them out.
Yeah. I mean, so many things that I do in every acoustic show now started as somebody wanted to do it in karaoke. Fathers and Sons, Cat Stevens, right? Like stuff like that. Just
Mm.
classic acoustic sort of vernacular stuff that is not you don't hear it around that much anymore, but it's great. And when you pull it out, people are like amazed. I would never have thought of that one.
Yeah.
I'm a Wild World guy. I don't know much. I'm not deep on Cat Stevens, but that's a great tune, and yeah, being able
Yep.
to pull it out was fantastic. And it's one of many many that came as karaoke requests.
Awesome.
Now, listen, in terms of the systems you need to stand up, there's some different
Hmm.
stuff that you need to provide for
Hmm.
karaoke to work. One is the people need to see your set list,
Yep.
right? I think you mostly take requests before the show, right? You come in prepared.
So let's back up first.
All right,
So we are starting in the do category,
good.
and the first do that we thought we should mention is that you need to invest in your systems.
Yeah,
So that is the thing that we're talking about right now. Now, what you were referring to is this gig that just happened.
yeah.
This is a really unique situation because it is technically live band karaoke, but in reality, it is more like a singing competition.
Uh,
So what ends up happening is that people sign up before the event starts, and they know that they're going to do at least one round of songs. And then if they make the second round, there'll be a second tier.
okay,
So what we prepped for was a potential 2 round deal with these people. But because we were there contracted for a specific amount of time, we played some of our stuff just as a band. And then we also opened the floor up to just walk ins who wanted to just do karaoke. So there was a bit of it that was, we were able to prep ahead of time. There was some stuff that we just had to be ready to do on the fly. And then the stuff in between that we just used to fill time.
yeah. And so, in terms of the walk-ins, how did you manage those requests? How did you manage them knowing what you could play?
So here are the things that we use in order to do this. Now, Dan's got an automated system. It's like app based and that kind of thing.
Yep.
We are, at least in this particular setup, very analog. So it involves printing out song lists, stapling them together, kind of spreading them out in the area, as well as, paper sign up sheets. So what happens is if you want to participate, you go over to a station, which is side stage, and we have a lyrics op. So there's somebody there who is triggering the lyrics as they progress, and they are also managing the sign-ins and all of that
Good.
jazz.
That's good.
You could technically split that up again across 2 people, but it just kind of depends on the setup.
Right.
We have done other corporate events where there was dedicated people for each of those. So the person that was doing the sign up was also kind of the MC for the night. They're the ones going like, all right, and here comes Jeff singing some Bon Jovi, while somebody else was operating the lyrics for the songs themselves. And the process that we use as far as like knowing what's coming up and how the people on stage are able to read the lyrics and such, we're using Pro Presenter to do that. Now it's a software specifically for live lyrics, and it's got a lot of really neat features. It's a little bit pricey, but because I work for the company, I have a free copy of it, so I'm going to use it.
There you go.
And the thing that I like about it specifically is that it gives us options to kind of elevate the experience. So we can add custom branding to the lyric pages. We can put logos up in between songs. Like we can do a lot
Nice.
with the product. So it feels high end, it feels white glove, it feels premium. And that was kind of the thing. So like when we went in there, we looked at the setup, we looked at the banners and all the promo material, and it was like, okay, let's use this particular color background because it jives with everything else that's going around. And it's just a little tiny detail, but makes a big difference for the person as far as experiencing it for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
that
it's
kind of stuff
probably,
matters.
it's the kind,
in
it's the
little
kind of thing
ways.
that they might not notice, but they certainly would notice if you didn't do it. If
Right.
things didn't match, it would be jarring. Things matching are smooth enough that it doesn't interrupt the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that we do just for the musicians on stage is at the beginning of every song, the first slide is the name of the song.
Helpful.
So it's not the first line of the lyrics, it's just the song. So that means that the second that the last verse is sung on the song before, it goes right up on to that monitor, which is on stage facing us. And so we know exactly where we're going, and that gives us time to kind of prep for things. So in certain circumstances, we got to grab a capo, we got to adjust our tuning, we got to do something that gives us the time of the person going off the stage from the previous song and coming up for the next one for us to kind of reset, prep, and make sure that when they're ready, we're ready.
It's good. And you're running tracks for all this too, right?
For the most part, depending on the songs,
Okay.
yeah, some of them have tracks, some of them don't. We typically run clicks for everything, unless it is that kind of tune where it just kind of meanders.
Yeah.
So like Friends in Low Places, or some of the older stuff where it just kind of, you can speed up and slow down, stop and start, and that kind of thing. We don't really worry about that.
Sure.
But for the most part, we're going to do that. One, because it fills it out. It's also more familiar for the person singing
Yes.
to hear the things that they recognize from the recording.
Yes.
A lot of people feel a certain way about using tracks or instrumentation that's not on stage. But the fact of the matter is that if we're doing Bon Jovi back to back with Carrie Underwood, we're not going to hire a fiddle player and a steel player and a dobro player. Like, there's just it's not practical to do those kinds of things.
And I think
tracks are going to help you there.
I think to your point though, you've also got civilian singers to help get through this thing, and them hearing the song the way they expect to hear it makes a huge difference.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, investing in systems, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So on my side, my show is a lot lighter weight than that. It's just a guy and a guitar. And before COVID, I did have binders, 3 little black binders that I kept up to date with my latest song list, and which was a pain in the butt to do, but I did it. And I paper sign up with some pens sitting around. And then while we were all locked down, I sort of thought, even when we come out of this, I don't really want people running their grubby fingers through my junk here. So let me just put all that away and we'll replace it with, and I built a web app that's mobile first, that people use to sign up, and the signups come to me, and I can manage the process of them and the schedule. I can push them around in order, and I can mark them as done and all that kind of stuff. They can tip me on it. They can actually tip to get to the front of the line.
Yeah, that's honestly, that's the coolest feature of that whole setup.
It is pretty killer. Yeah. Now the thing that I don't have handled in a very sophisticated way, it works, but it's not sophisticated, is lyrics. So when you look at the queue page, you see. You don't see names or songs for anyone but yourself, but on the ones that are you, like, hey, here's me, I'm 3 songs from now, there's a link that just does a search on Genius for the song title and takes you to what might be the lyrics page, maybe not. So people come up and do it with their phone in their face. Yeah. And it works. It's not elegant. And there are times when my chart doesn't match what Genius has, and so we get out of sync there, and people feel like they're lost. But really, it's me that's lost, probably, because whatever I'm playing from Ultimate Guitar, mostly, it may have missed a piece or something. I certainly have thought about when it was old school, when it was on paper, I had my band helper view on a stand off of my mic, and people would stand right next to me and kind of share it, and I'd be able to like point at the lyrics. Here's where we are, right? And as I paged through that with my foot Bluetooth turner, right, the lyrics moved along, and that was kind of how people expected it. I did have some people like bellyache that I didn't have a bouncing ball for them. Yep, that's it. I have an AirTurn BT4, I think. Then part of the thing is part of the deal with the show is you just got to help them along some. I mean, we'll talk more about that on a later bullet point, but how you get around not having the lyrics turn colors as time goes by is that you're singing with them. You're shoving them through the song, So that's part of the process for me too.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that we end up doing is like counting people in, because if we're doing tracks, we have the cues.
Yep.
So we know when stuff is coming. So yeah, you count them in, you do that kind of thing. But ultimately, you need to think through whatever that system is, and you need to make sure that you are as confident with those systems as you possibly can be. The easiest thing to do would be to, if you're playing with tracks, to like record a video version of that where the lyrics move along with the track itself. I mean, Karaoke version does actually sell the bouncy ball style videos that you can use in conjunction. Now, of course, the issue is that their arrangements aren't always what you're looking for. Like we did I'm Every Woman by Whitney Houston, and the original version of it that's on the soundtrack has this like 90-second, almost 2-minute introduction before it gets to the thing that like you remember hearing on the radio.
Right.
And so all that had to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of manual cutting, and I was going in and adding the cues and all that stuff. So you do have to be willing to put that stuff together and make sure that it's as seamless as possible.
Yeah.
So invest in systems. Whatever it is you're doing, learn it, set it up, do it to the best of your ability, be confident in it. End of list. Next, be fearless. And this is one that I came up with. And to me, the ethos of live band karaoke is that it's chaos. You don't know what you're going to get. It's either going to be the biggest disaster you have ever seen or the greatest thing you've ever seen. And nobody knows
Right.
what it's going to be until it starts happening.
Right. I've told you the story about the first band I ever tried this with. So it was, we
I
had
think so.
we had
Probably.
we had a thing we were calling 5-minute Rockstar, and so
Mhm.
it was you drop your request into, with your name and contact information for a mailing list into a fishbowl, and we pull out, I think, 2 per set to have people come up and do
Okay.
it with us. And the first one that came up was a girl who came up and did Brown Eyed Girl, and had none of it. She had nothing. She didn't have the fa la 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 la's. She had nothing. Couldn't, like, we were goosing her along the whole way. Like she had nothing. And then she got done and she turned to me and said, "Can I do one more?" Like, no, you're done. Get off. And then the second
You
guy,
barely got through that.
she didn't do that. Yeah. Second guy who got up was doing the weight and tore it up. He was incredible. And later I was talking to the bartender. He said, "Yeah, that guy was a series finalist in Star Search with Ed McMahon in the 80s. Like a decade or two later, he would have been an American Idol, right? But that wasn't a thing back then. But he's the real deal, and now he does karaoke in this bar every time we do it. So, yes, it was a real story of two extremes. You never know what you're going to get, and sometimes you love it, and sometimes you get through it.
Yep. But it gives you the ability to go in directions you wouldn't normally go and do things outside of your comfort level. And to me, the thing that I love about this particular format is the spontaneous stuff that happens that you weren't expecting, you weren't sure was going to work.
Yep.
And maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But the discovery is to me, the joy in it.
Yes.
So, in our situation, we had somebody asked to do "Hit Me Baby One More Time" wasn't on the list, wasn't something that we had prepped, and I looked at our bassist Jeff, who's still pretty new, and I was like, "Do you have this?" And he's like, "No," and so I was just like, "Well, hand it to me," and so I played bass on that one, got the slap part figured out, like and we were able to pull it off. Nobody was any the wiser, and I got to do a thing that I really enjoy doing. I love playing bass. It's not something I get to do very often. And it was just kind of a willingness to be like, all right, we're not 100% on this, but I bet you we're 80 something percent there. And we could probably figure the rest of it out as we go.
Yep.
And that's, to me, that's the magic of the whole thing. The other thing that happened that I was I was really proud of is we did I'm Every Woman. We didn't get a chance to rehearse it before the show. And the lady who did that song had performed at the previous event last year. And I just knew she was going to crush because she's just incredible. She did Walking on Sunshine last year. And like, it was the most fun I've ever had playing that song ever. Because she just like, her energy was just like incredible. And if you remember I'm Every Woman, the Whitney Houston version, there's like this really crazy, like fifth harmony above what she's singing in the second verse. It's of confusion in your mind, but it's like up there. And I hadn't practiced it, hadn't prepped it, but I just like literally full voice, like 3 feet away from the mic, just like sent it.
Yeah.
And she looked over, and then all the other guys in the band looked over. They're like, did that just happen? Like, it was the proudest musical moment I've had in ages.
It's great.
Where it was just like, here goes nothing. And it like, I nailed it, and it was awesome.
That's great.
So that's the kind of stuff that I really dig. It's the idea that we're going to try something, and it's going to go however it's going to go. And you take the thing that you learn from it, and maybe you don't do it again, but like maybe it just takes you in a direction you hadn't prepared for.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. Just by introducing this random element on stage, it just, it gets you off the rails of your normal gig. It gets you loose and creative and thinking in ways you don't think. I completely agree.
So be fearless.
Be fearless.
go into it. The next thing that you need to do is to make sure that you, as the musician, are going out of your way to play to the strengths of the person who is singing.
Yeah. Look, your job is to
Whatever
make
that
them,
means.
your job is to make them great.
100%. And that doesn't always necessarily mean that it's about you.
Right.
If anything, it's actually not
No,
about
it's
you at all.
not about you in the slightest.
And even like the story that I was telling you before, where I hit that harmony, it was there and it was impactful because it backed her up
Right.
in a way that was like really special. And it didn't pull focus from her. It just made her performance that much better. And that's ultimately what we're there to do.
Yeah.
So even if your job is to sit there and play the guitar solo to a particular song exactly the way that it sounds on the record, you're doing that as a service to the performer. And it's not about you. It's not about like your execution as much as it is about doing the thing that makes the singer feel as comfortable as possible, as familiar as possible with what they're used to doing.
Yeah. And
or what they're used to hearing.
You could say that even in a normal gig, that solo isn't about you either. It's really in service of the song, right? But in this case, the song's there in service of this guest. And,
yes.
That's really ultimately who you're there to make shine.
Yeah. And so that means helping singers count them in.
Yeah.
If they miss something, they miss a cue, sing to kind of get them back on track,
right.
but only in passing. Don't
right.
do it.
Right.
Don't sing over them.
Don't take over for them. Yeah.
No, your job is to be the guide on that journey.
Yep.
I've talked about this book 1,000 times probably, but there's this guy, Donald Miller. He's a marketing savant, and he's got this whole story brand kind of platform
right.
as far as like marketing, and like the number one component of his methodology is that your job as the whatever is to not be the hero of the story, but to be the guide that makes the customer the hero of the story.
Right.
So your job is to be the Miyagi to their Daniel-san, I suppose.
There you go.
So be in service of the song, be in service of the vocalist, be in service of the customer, because ultimately that's what you're there to do. Play to their strengths, not yours. Okay. So those are the 3 do's. Let's go to don'ts.
Don'ts.
And there's really only 2 of those because the third one is a total throwaway, but I couldn't resist.
No, we can turn it into something. I have faith.
We'll get there.
I have faith.
We'll get there. All right. So why don't you take this one?
So the first don't is don't gatekeep. And what I mean by that is quality of performance is not yours to judge at these things. Believe me, the guests will be judging themselves plenty without your help.
Yeah.
But what happens when somebody stands up and delivers like a really amazing performance is it actually is suppressive to the people who want to go next. There are people that, you hear, I could never follow that. Or, I'll just sit back and I'm just here to watch. There are a lot of people who get pushed back from trying when the quality is consistently top, right?
Yeah.
It's got to look like amateurs. It's got to be amateurs, palpably got to be amateurs for it to really, really work in a room. I have a regular, and he does karaoke with a lot of different venues. He's like a karaoke guy. And he's not what you'd call good.
Yep.
I love him with all my heart. He's loud. I actually had to get, I'm now using my Phoenix wireless for it, which has a volume on the receiver. Yeah, that's the one. So I can turn him down a little bit when he gets up because he's just really high volume, but not necessarily high pitch accuracy. And he'll start off pitch and stay off pitch for the whole song if I let him. But he sells it, man. Nobody sells a song like this guy.
Oh, yeah.
No professional singer sells a song like this guy. He's so into it and so over the top with it. And so it's like, you can't help love him, even though like, all right, well, the performance is a little questionable, but like, he's so into it and he just draws you into it so much. I proposed to him that My Way by Frank Sinatra would be a great one for him. And he now closes every show that I've done with him with My Way. And he's big with it, like huge. It does the full like Frankie, thing at the end of it. And it's super fun. Those kinds of moments, that kind of the relaxation that happens in a room when you see somebody up there just sounding like an amateur and loving it. That's really important to the vibe of a karaoke night. So don't gatekeep, don't judge. Everybody did great. High five every single person or whatever it is, however you celebrate. If something comes up that's really surprising, I had a 12-year-old girl come up and do Hallelujah, and it was just spectacular. Like, you can note standout stuff like that, especially with kids, but don't like, all right, moving on. Whatever way you have to like undercut a celebration if the performance wasn't where you thought it ought to be, that's a don't do that.
Yeah. When you were talking through that, I remember the first time I went to karaoke as like a person.
Yeah.
Some friends of mine from college, there was literally a Holiday Inn by the highway that did karaoke, I think on Wednesday or Thursday nights. And we went with my buddy and then his two roommates who were in a band together. And the guy who played drums, his name is Jesse, and he signed up. He's the first one who of that group that went up there, and he did Rebel Yell, Billy Idol.
Sure.
And when I say he put his whole ass into that performance, I'm talking like 2 hands on the microphone on his knees, just like screaming that chorus as hard as he could. It is still one of those things that has stuck with me. It's been 20 years since that happened. It is one of the most impactful things that I've ever seen. And it totally kind of like summed up, oh, this is what karaoke is supposed to be.
Right.
Because that room, again, we were right outside of Nashville. Karaoke at that particular place was for never wases or has-beens to kind of like exert their little circle of power or influence. And to watch somebody go in there and just frankly take the piss out of the whole thing was one of the most refreshing and hilarious and incredible things I've ever seen.
That's great.
So that's what it's about. You know, awesome is awesome. Good is subjective.
Yeah. I like that.
On that note, the next thing that you should not do is be a snob.
Yep.
And that's got more to do. This is very much the musician side of this.
Yep.
And it's not about what we were talking about before, like, you know, arbiters of good or whatever. This is more about the customer experience of the whole operation.
Yeah. Look, they're going to want to do Sweet Caroline. They're going to want that. So suck it up.
Yep.
Do it. Do it.
Brown Eyed Girl.
Yeah. Don't not do it. Do those.
Yep.
Yep.
So don't say, oh, we're not going to play this. Like, if you are considering doing this kind of gig and there's any conversation about, oh, we're not doing that, you've already lost.
There's zero room to be too cool for a song in this business. Zero room. You know, you got to be completely willing to do whatever.
Yeah. And if it's, unless it's like a very specific lane, like, you know, you're going to do pop punk emo karaoke. Okay. Yeah. You're not going to necessarily do Sweet Caroline. And if you do, you're going to find some like
you'll rock. Yeah.
Version of Sweet Caroline that, you know, some punk band did back in the mid 90s,
right?
That they put on like the backside of a 7-inch or whatever. You're still going to find ways of doing it. But the point is to do it for the widest swath of people.
Yep.
And this is something that isn't just karaoke specific. Like this, you should be doing this for whatever project you're trying to do.
That's right.
You know, specifically talking about the whole pop punk thing is when we started talking about songs we wanted to do, Keenan, who's one of the guitar players, he and I are very kind of like, our sensibilities are very similar as far as like the music that we like. And he started listing off all these songs that he loved that he thought we should do. And it's like the 5th song off of their 3rd EP that wasn't used as a single. And like, yeah, it's great. And it is a song that I love, but it's like, it's not going to make the list.
Right.
And if it does make the list, it's going to make the list like 6 months down the line when, you know, you've set up some sort of like standing event where you've got repeat customers and you've got to cater to that kind of clientele.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, you're middle of the road, right down the like.
Yeah, and something like that,
curveballs.
Some oddball like that, you're going to Shaka Khan it, right? You're going to give it 2 or 3 nights, and if it doesn't perform, it's out.
I think you mean Wayne Chung it.
I do mean Wang Chung it. I mean Wang Chung it. I don't mean Shaka Khan it.
Shaka Khan, it's because I've said I'm every woman like 1,000 times.
I guess I now have that in my head.
Yeah. So don't be precious. Play the stuff that everybody wants to hear. Learn the stuff that everybody wants to sing. Don't be a jerk about that kind of stuff. It serves no one, and frankly, just makes the likelihood of you being successful at this particular thing impossible.
Yep.
So don't do it.
Now, speaking of things that everyone wants to sing, we have one final don't.
It's this is what happens when Dan and I are brainstorming day of the episode,
and we feel a need
through.
we feel a need for symmetry. We had 3 do's.
Yes.
We feel like we need 3 don'ts. So the final
100%.
don't is don't
Stop believing.
Yeah. Although it actually raises a point, because there are songs that people are going to want to do karaoke that you and I know aren't a one person singing it. It's a whole room singing it. When Don't Stop Believin' happens, the whole room stops and sings, right?
Yep.
What's Up, Four Non Blondes?
Yep.
So a bunch of others we could name, right? So that's an awesome moment when you've got a karaoke singer, a karaoke guest leading a whole room that's yelling back at them. It's a good moment. It's a good moment.
Absolutely. We had a bunch of those at this event, and it was so much fun. The funny thing is that it was a competition, but it was very much like political in the way that it was, because these 2 guys came up and did Uptown Funk, and I sent a video of that to the group, and they had the place just rocking. Everybody was up front. They were dancing like nobody even touched them as far as caliber of performance, like engagement. They were the most fun. It wasn't even close. They did not win. They didn't even make the second round.
Huh.
Which is interesting, but it was because it was all a vote based on the people in the room, and people who had done this before kind of knew how to work the rules and the
politicking going on. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Wow.
So those guys ended up winning like audience choice. They got they won the miscongeniality.
All right. That's good.
Component of it.
That's good.
Which
they
is well
just
deserved.
They need to up their electioneering game for next year.
Yes. Yeah. They weren't willing to to grease the palms of the right kind of people, even though they crushed.
Yeah. And that song, Electioneering by Radiohead, probably too deep a cut.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would agree. So, do invest in systems. Do be fearless. Do play to the strengths of the people performing. Don't gatekeep. Don't be a snob. Don't stop believing, baby.
There you go.
And that's it. If you can think of any other things that we didn't talk about that would make a live band karaoke gig a success, let us know about it. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If this is not a thing that you have ever considered before, think about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a really cool offering. And as far as a unique value proposition, there's so many upsides to it.
Listen, as a solo acoustic guy, bars hire karaoke repeating. They hire one person to handle their Thursday karaoke. And so that's how it's one of the ways you become a weekly regular instead of being on the 6 to 9 week cycle. Yeah,
for sure. Rob in the live stream was saying he's been thinking about doing this with his school group. They were the class that we did the lecture with.
Right.
If you remember?
Yep.
Which was so much fun. And talking about whether it's worth scaling down because they don't have the experience. And I think that's actually a really good exercise, because if the goal is to try something that you can then build upon, do start small. Start with a smaller list. Start with 30 songs. Start with 20 songs. Start with 50 songs. And maybe just do it for an hour or so, or 2 hours. Because the other thing that you need to kind of take into account is the format of karaoke actually doesn't lend itself to a very long set, because the turnover is so high.
Yeah.
So you're going to do a 2 or 3 minute song, and it's going to take 90 seconds to 2 minutes to reset to get the next person up on stage ready to go. So a live band karaoke set over the course of 2 hours, maybe 20 songs, maybe. Yeah, it's probably closer to 15.
And there'll be zero flow.
No, it'll be a hot mess the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yep.
Totally fine. So yeah, start slow, start low, and just build over. It's just like anything else. Like if you've got a standing gig, let's say you set something up weekly, you start with 30 songs, and then you add 5 more.
Yeah.
And then the next week you add 5 more, and the next thing you know, you're 100 songs deep, and you're off to the races.
Right.
So
Suddenly you look up and you have 530 on your list.
And it just happens. Like, you know, you don't even have to, oh, Rob's wanting to get us back on the lecture circuit this fall. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Game to do so. But like we said, if you have any questions, let us know. Hit us up. Thanks for all of the folks for participating in the live chat this evening. And we're going to keep cranking these out. If you'd like to support the show, you can do anything that Mike's about to tell you, but we'll go ahead and call it for this week. In Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Adam Johnson.
In Greensboro, North Carolina, I'm Dan Ray.
You have been listening to the Cover Band Confidential podcast for the week of June 28th, 2024.